Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. I'm joined by 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young, as well as the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch. I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer. And first of all, this week we wanted to talk a bit about seeding. It is underway in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and how are things going for you? Kevin, you said you were hoping to start on last Saturday. Did that happen?
Yeah, I did, and we've made some progress. It's interesting in this area, and I think it might be common in a number of areas, is that it was dry enough to seed, but because of the cold temperatures, people hadn't gone out to do the pre-seed weed burn-off or hadn't been able to. There was a short window, a couple of days, where conditions were suitable for spraying, but then it got too cold, freezing overnight, not warming up enough during the day, and then some windy days. So people would have liked to have been seeding, would have been seeding much more, but the sprayer was behind, and they wanted that burn off operation before they seeded. So, but things are hopping now. Everything is starting to move, and there's some acres being covered in this part of the world.
Saskatchewan released its first crop report of the year, and Ryan, you had a chance to speak with Kim Stonehouse. What did you learn from that?
Well, officially seeding is underway in the province, but he said that it's behind the 5 and 10-year averages for this time of year. We're roughly about 3% of the 2026 crop planted in the ground. That's behind the 5-year average of 12% and the 10-year average of 13%. Mainly the South is doing all of the seeding progress, while the East Central region, the Northeast, and the Northwest even are dealing with a lot of flooding as a result of all of the rapid snow melt and creeks and streams, the water levels rising rapidly as a result as well. So they're continuing to grapple with that. And hopefully, with some drier weather expected in the next few days, that'll help dry some of the fields and stuff. So some prayers for that as well. Around the Regina area here, I haven't seen any seeding progress being made in the immediate Regina area where I live, but I did see some ruts created in one field. So I could imagine one farmer tried his hand in the field and said, nope, it's still too wet. Probably went back out. But I did do some traveling this week in the Strasbourg area as part of the CKRM Country Cookout. Checked things out with the Denboer family, the ones that had the log house transported from La Jourde to Strasbourg. And they're not started seeding yet, but they do have plans to, seed some wheat, some canola, some fenugreek, if you ever heard of that variety. So they're kind of ready to go once conditions are more favorable. And then our team went down to the Tribune area, directly south of Weyburn. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go because I've been feeling under the weather the last couple of days. But from what I could tell from the interview, the gentleman said that they have started seeding. They're in the middle of seeding Durham, but it's incredibly dry down there. So not a surprise in some of the extreme southern regions, but that's kind of the gist of what's been happening around this part of the province.
Yeah, here in the Yorkton area too, I haven't seen any wheels turn. There has been some spring flooding north of Yorkton. I understand that I think it was the highway between Kenora and Priestville was underwater at one point. I think it's cleared now, but I think there's still some issues around that Foam Lake Elfross area when it comes to high water levels. So definitely not much activity Yorkton north. As for south, I'm sure we could see some activity as soon as perhaps this weekend or early next week. Kevin, your thoughts on that? Here we have some people like you who have been able to get out in the field, and others who are probably aren't even close to getting out there yet because of spring flooding.
Yeah, we're a little later than normal for this area, but that's not a concern. In fact, people would still welcome a real good rain. Surface moisture is just fine, but subsoil moisture is lacking in this neck of the woods. You have to feel for the producers in the areas where flooding is occurring, where there's all sorts of water on fields and causing issues. And another rainfall or snowfall event could really cause severe delays and big concern in the northern half of the grain belt, particularly the northeast and east central north of you guys there, Doug, in Yorkton.
Manitoba also released their first crop report of the year this week, and they're at 2% seeded. And it sounds like the southwest part of the province, basically from the Trans-Canada Highway south, they're 2%, but the northwest, which is pretty much from the Trans-Canada Highway all the way up to the Paw, there's been really no seeding reported as of yet. But they're lucky, Kevin, in the fact that they haven't had overland flooding.
Okay, yeah, that would be good news for them. And I don't know what normal is for Manitoba crop progress at this time of the year, but I suspect they're way behind normal as well. And interesting to note is, as we said, 3% seeded in Saskatchewan, and that's going to progress rapidly and keep going up with progress in the south. But last year at the same date, 18%. So we've got accustomed to seeing much more progress at certain times.
Also this week, we heard the Saskatchewan government announce the strychnine rules when it comes to training and all of the, I guess, hoops you have to jump through in order to be able to purchase and use strychnine again this year. Ryan, was that something you were following up on, I believe?
I saw a little bit of details here and there. I didn't get too deep into it. What I do know is that there's a 90-minute training video on the basics of using strychnine. So anybody who's going to be applying for its use will have to watch that video and undertake all training. It was something that we expected would happen at some point. We just didn't know some of the finer details yet. But Kevin, have you followed up on that? And if so, what were you able to kind of glean from it?
Well, like you say, a lot of hoops to jump through to get access to strychnine, and it's a ways away yet before the product will actually be available, and then producers have to go through the training thing. And in my opinion, by the time it's available, it's going to be too darn late for doing a real good gopher control this year. You know, especially the crops that gophers can really hurt, and canola is one of those. And when it starts coming up, if there's even a moderate infestation of gophers, not even a preponderance of gopher holes, but any number of gophers, they can clean off a huge area of canola, and it's just gone. And that's a problem that's going to occur even before strychnine is available, in my opinion. I mean, you don't see this in the literature very much, but the people I talk to, in my personal experience, is that crop mix makes a real big difference. Gophers love canola, and they just chew it off and chew it to the ground and destroy big areas, many more acres than you'd think that number of gophers could destroy. But if you've got mustard seeded or you got flax seeded, they don't like that. They don't do nearly as much harm to those crops. And I don't see this in the literature anywhere, but from my experience and the people I talk to, those are good strategies to try to limit gopher damage if you haven't been able to control them. And we're at the stage of the season where the little ones are going to start coming out. There's going to go from ma and pa running around to a whole bunch of little ones out there, and then the control issue gets much more difficult.
All right. Also this week, Ryan, you spoke with Chad Ross from the Saskatchewan Cattle Association, and it sounds like they're undergoing an internal review right now.
That's correct. They're doing a strategic review, as they call it. They want to make sure that the work that they're currently doing meets the priorities and needs of the livestock producers that they represent rather provincially. And from what I could gather from my conversation with Chad, there's no set timeline for when this review would be completed. They want to give themselves enough time to do this thoroughly and do their due diligence. Now, that would also include a new permanent CEO, as Christina Betker, who was the previous permanent CEO. She's no longer with the organization. There is a couple of people that are interim CEOs now. Janice Bruno and Sandy Russell of Spring Creek Land and Cattle Consulting as of February 1st, I believe that's supposed to say 2026. It says 2025 in the news release that I just read, so not sure if that's a typo or not. But nonetheless, they're looking at everything from how levy dollars are being utilized, to governance, and so on and so forth. So producers will have an opportunity to engage with the Saskatchewan Cattle Association in terms of if their advocacy work is meeting their needs and is aligned with what they want. They can contact the SCA through email or telephone or whatever means of communication. So we'll see where this review goes and see what other kind of changes are being made. But definitely the CEO one is particularly interesting to me.
Kevin, of course, the SCA undergoing this review. We've also heard, of course, that the Alberta Beef Producers was going to withdraw from the CCA if they didn't see more transparency in that organization. Do you think there's any relationship as to that and, of course, the SCA undergoing a review?
I'm not sure there's a relationship between the Saskatchewan and the Alberta issues, but I do think that this is a case of Sask Cattle Association trying to reinvent itself, and find its way. I know Sandy Russell very well. Have enjoyed interviewing her and visiting with her on numerous occasions. Her and her sister Janice Bruno are very well regarded in the cattle industry, and have had a wealth of experience in all manner of aspects of cattle production and economics. So I think they've chosen some very good interim managers to get them through this rough patch. But I really think you have to read into this that there's some internal issues and some questioning of priorities. And it's interesting that really, when you think of who actually talks for Saskatchewan cattle producers, the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Association probably is doing a better job and has a higher visibility than Saskatchewan Cattle Association, even though the SCA is the one that has the actual funding from checkoff dollars.
Well, speaking of the Canadian Cattle Association, Tyler Fulton was speaking at the House of Commons Agriculture Committee this week, talking about, of course, what seems to be a bit of a herd buildup right now, and of course also opposing the Mercosur deal with those South American countries allowing more beef into the country. Do they have a legitimate argument there, Kevin?
Well, it's amazing how everybody's a free trader until it's going to bite them in the butt. I think the main point that I agree with is that if you allow too much Brazilian beef or Mercosur beef into Canada, the U.S. is going to be very upset, and you can't afford to lose the U.S. market, which is absolutely huge for the beef industry. That being said, I don't have a lot of sympathy for trade barriers. If the beef is cheaper and it isn't as good a quality, well, let people make their choice as to whether they buy it or not. But if you want to trade around the world with your commodities, you have to also be willing to break down barriers so that countries have access to your markets. And that isn't necessarily a very popular view, but some of the cattle producers that probably thought of themselves as free enterprisers, free traders, when this issue came up, changed their tune rather quickly.
And also, the House of Commons Agriculture Committee has filed a report back with the House of Commons itself regarding the planned closure of those 7 Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada research centers, 3 full service centers and 4 satellite service centers. And of course, that report suggests that the decision should be halted and reversed. Kevin, what do you think is going to come of that report?
That's very interesting. And, it shows that there is support in Ottawa for turning this around. Whether the government actually listens or not, I'm less certain how that's going to be. We've got a government that's going to have to make a lot of hard decisions about cutting expenses if they're ever going to get the fiscal house in order in this country. So it's interesting that the entire House of Commons Ag Committee is making the recommendation to turn this around on the Ag Canada stations. Whether the government actually listens or not, I don't have enough political experience at the federal level to know how much weight that will carry. My betting is that it will not sway the government on this issue, but I hope to be proven wrong.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, and the 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director, Ryan Young, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director saying so long until next time.